Commander Taemin stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, watching something he had never seen before. Through the main screen, two alien fleets faced each other in perfect lines. Each ship held its position exactly 3 kilometers from the next. No one moved out of formation. No one fired without permission. "Sir, the crystalline ships are broadcasting their battle announcement," said Lieutenant Do Yun from his station. "They're asking the insect fleet to confirm readiness for engagement." Taemin shook his head. After 6 months of exploring this part of space, human customs still felt strange compared to what these aliens did. The Valak Empire ships looked like floating diamonds, each one the size of a city. Their enemy, the Hive Confederation, flew vessels that reminded Taemin of giant beetles with metal shells. "They're really going to wait for permission to start fighting?" asked Ensign Hyo Jung, the youngest member of the bridge crew. "Watch and learn," Taemin told her. "We're here to observe, not judge." The insect fleet responded with clicking sounds that the ship's computer translated as formal acceptance. Both sides had exactly 47 ships. Both sides arranged themselves in identical formations. Even the weapons they carried followed some kind of agreement about what could and could not be used. Duyun pulled up information on his screen. "Sir, I'm reading about something called the Galactic Military Accord. It's been controlling how wars work in this part of space for over 3,000 years. "What kind of rules?" Taemin asked. "Everything, sir. Where battles can happen, when they can start, which weapons are allowed, how many casualties are acceptable before surrender." Duyun paused, reading more. "It says here that civilian areas are completely off limits, military targets only, and both sides have to agree on battle zones before fighting begins." Taemin found this fascinating. On Earth, war had been chaos. Humans fought with whatever worked. They used surprise. They broke enemy supply lines. They targeted anything that helped the enemy war effort. The idea of asking permission to fight seemed impossible. The battle began exactly at the agreed time. The crystalline ships fired first, sending beams of pure light toward the insect fleet. The insect ships responded with projectiles that looked like living creatures. Each side took turns. When one ship took damage, it moved to the back of the formation to make repairs. When a ship was destroyed, both sides paused to record the loss. "This is incredible," whispered Ensign Hyo Jung. "They're keeping score." She was right. The computer showed running tallies for both sides. Ships destroyed, crew lost, damage percentages. It looked more like a game than a real war. "Sir," Do-Yun said quietly, "I could end this battle in 10 minutes. Taemin turned to his tactical officer. "Explain." "Look at their formations. Perfect lines, predictable movements, no one watching their flanks. If we hit their command ships first, then attacked from multiple angles while they're trying to reorganize." Do-Yun stopped himself. "But we're not supposed to interfere." "No, we're not," Taemin agreed. "We're observers. We follow their rules while we're in their space." The battle continued for 3 hours. Both sides fought with mathematical precision. When the Valak Empire reached 23% casualties, their commander broadcast a formal surrender. The insect fleet accepted graciously. They even offered medical aid to repair damaged Valak ships. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," reported Communications Officer Min Kyung. "Both fleets are hailing us." Taemin frowned. The Soul's Pride had maintained distance throughout the battle, making no aggressive moves. "Put them through." The main screen split to show 2 alien commanders. The Valak looked like a living crystal sculpture with thousands of faceted surfaces. The Hive leader resembled a praying mantis the size of a human, with 4 arms and compound eyes. "Unknown vessel," the Valak commander spoke first. "You have observed our engagement without declaring allegiance. This violates Article 12 of the Military Accord." The Hive commander clicked in agreement. "Neutral observation requires prior approval from both combatants. You must submit to inspection and integration into proper galactic order." Taemin kept his expression calm. "We are explorers from Earth. We meant no offense by watching your battle. We're simply trying to learn about this region of space." "Earth?" The Valak commander's crystal body pulsed with different colors. We have no record of this world in the Galactic Registry. Unregistered civilizations cannot operate independently in civilized space. The Hive leader added, "You must choose immediate allegiance to either the Velak Empire or the Hive Confederation. Failure to choose means automatic classification as pirates." Both alien fleets began moving toward the Soul's Pride, 47 Velak ships and 47 Hive ships, all aiming weapons at the single human vessel. "Sir," Do-Yun said urgently, "they're targeting us." Taemin looked at his crew. These were good people. Explorer types, not warriors. The Soul's Pride carried some weapons, but nothing compared to these massive alien warships. By every reasonable standard, they should surrender immediately. "What are our options, Do-Yun?" The tactical officer worked quickly at his station. "We could try to run, but they'll catch us before we reach hyperspace. We could surrender and hope they treat prisoners well. Or..." He paused. "Or what?" "We could fight, sir, but not by their rules." On the screen, both alien commanders waited for Taemin's decision. Behind them, 94 warships prepared to destroy one small human vessel that had committed the crime of watching a battle without permission. Taemin thought about Earth. He thought about the human colonies spreading across space, trying to find their place among the stars. He thought about all the other species these aliens might have forced into their rigid system of rules and regulations. "Forget their rules," Taemin said quietly. "We make our own." He turned to his crew. "Do-Yun, I want firing solutions on their command ships. Hyo-Jung, prepare all escape pods in case this goes badly. Min-Kyung, record everything and prepare a data burst to Earth. They need to know what we found out here." "Sir," Do-Yun said, "the Soul's Pride isn't built for this kind of fight." "No, but we're humans," Taemin replied. "We adapt." The alien commander seemed puzzled by the delay. The Velak spoke first. "You have 30 seconds to declare allegiance or face destruction." "We choose option 3, Taemin announced. Both aliens looked confused. "There is no option 3 in the military accord." "Exactly." Taemin smiled grimly. "Attack pattern Delta 7, Do-Yun. Target their command ships simultaneously." What happened next had never been seen in 3,000 years of galactic warfare. Instead of arranging itself in formation, the Soul's Pride accelerated directly toward the gap between the two fleets. Instead of requesting permission to fight, it opened fire on both sides at once. The human ship's weapons were much smaller than the alien vessels, but humans had learned to be creative with limited resources. Do-Yun targeted sensor arrays and communication equipment. He aimed for weapon mounts and engine systems. Instead of trying to destroy the massive ships, he worked to blind and cripple them. "Both fleets are trying to communicate with each other," Min-Kyung reported, "but we've disrupted their command frequencies." The aliens had never fought an enemy that attacked both sides of a conflict simultaneously. Their formations assumed threats would come from one direction. When the Soul's Pride dove between them, firing in all directions, neither fleet could respond effectively without risking damage to their former enemies. "Sir, the Velak are demanding we follow proper engagement protocols," Min-Kyung said. "The Hive is threatening to report us to something called the High Council." "Tell them to file a complaint," Taemin ordered. Do-Yun, status report. 14 Velak ships disabled, 11 Hive ships out of action. They're trying to reform their lines, but they keep getting in each other's way. The Soul's Pride spun and weaved between the much larger vessels like a fighter plane buzzing aircraft carriers. Every few seconds, Do-Yun would fire at a new target, always aiming to disable rather than destroy. The aliens seemed more confused than angry. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures," reported sensor specialist Ye-Jin. "More ships are coming," Taemin cursed. "Reinforcements would end this quickly." "How many?" "Just one, sir. But it's huge. A massive vessel dropped out of hyperspace between all three fleets. It dwarfed even the largest Velak ship. The hull carried symbols from dozens of different species. "This is Arbitrator Keln of the Galactic Peace Authority," a new voice announced. "All vessels will cease hostilities immediately and prepare for judgment." The Velak and Hive fleets immediately stopped moving. Both alien commanders began broadcasting explanations and accusations. The Soul's Pride also stopped firing, though Timon kept his weapons ready. Unknown human vessel, Arbitrator Keln, continued. You have violated 17 articles of the Galactic Military Accord. You will surrender your ship for impoundment and your crew for processing. Timon looked around his bridge. His crew waited for orders. Outside, 94 alien warships and one massive arbitrator vessel surrounded them. Any sane commander would surrender. Arbitrator Keln, Timon broadcast, we are citizens of Earth, which has never signed your military accord. We don't recognize your authority over our actions. Silence filled the communication channels. Apparently, no one had ever said those words before. Finally, the Admiral Boram walked through the corridors of Kepler Station, humanity's first major colony beyond Earth's solar system. 3 months had passed since Commander Timon's encounter with alien fleets, and the consequences were arriving faster than anyone had expected. Admiral, Captain Hyunwoo called out as he approached with a datapad. The Triumvirate Alliance has sent their final ultimatum. Boram took the device and read the message. The language was formal and polite, but the meaning was clear. Humanity had 48 hours to submit to Alliance governance or face what they called corrective action. How many ships are coming? Boram asked. 3 full armadas, ma'am. 150 vessels total. Our scouts report they'll arrive tomorrow morning, Galactic Standard Time. Boram looked out through the station's observation windows at the human fleet preparing for battle. 32 ships, most of them converted civilian vessels with hastily installed weapons. Against the might of the Triumvirate Alliance, it seemed hopeless. What does the Alliance want us to do? She asked. Hyunwoo consulted his notes. They've transmitted standard battle protocols. We're supposed to evacuate all civilians from the station and designated combat zones. Military vessels should arrange themselves in defensive formations at least 50 kilometers from any non-combatant areas. Battle begins at 800 hours tomorrow, and we're expected to surrender when our losses exceed 25%. They want us to move our families away from our own colony so they can attack us more conveniently. Yes, ma'am. It's apparently standard procedure under the Galactic Military Accord. Boram studied the enemy fleet movements on her tactical display. The Alliance ships moved in perfect formations, following flight patterns that had been used for thousands of years. She had spent weeks studying reports from the Soul's Pride incident, learning how these aliens thought about warfare. Send a message to Admiral Chen at Earth Command, Boram ordered. Tell him the Alliance expects us to fight by their rules. Ask him what he thinks about that. The response came back within hours. Admiral Chen's message was short. Rules are for people who can't win without them. Show them what humans do when someone threatens our families. Boram gathered her senior staff in the station's command center. Captain Hyunwoo, Commander Yoonji from Communications, Lieutenant Colonel Minho, who led the station's ground defenses, and Captain Soo-jin, who commanded the stealth squadron. The Alliance thinks this is going to be a polite war, Boram began. They want us to move our civilians, arrange our ships in neat lines, and fight according to rules written by species we've never met. Are we going to follow their protocols? Asked Minho. What do you think? Boram replied. Soo-jin smiled. I think the Alliance is about to learn why humans survived on a planet full of predators. Boram activated the tactical display, showing Kepler Station and the surrounding space. Here's what we're going to do. The Alliance expects us to evacuate civilians. Instead, we're going to make sure every civilian has access to emergency shelters built into the asteroid belt. They expect us to establish clear military zones. Instead, we're going to use the entire system as our battlefield. She pointed to different areas on the display. Soo-jin, your stealth ships will hide in the asteroid field. When the Alliance arrives, they'll scan for our main fleet and ignore rocks they think are empty. Hyunwoo, I want our main force positioned behind Kepler's largest moon. Make it look like we're following their rules and hiding defensively. What about ground defenses? Minho asked. The Alliance won't expect any. According to their rules, ground combat only happens after space battles are concluded, and formal terms are negotiated. They'll assume the station is helpless once they defeat our fleet. Yoonji looked worried. Admiral, what if we're wrong about their capabilities? What if following their rules is the smart thing to do? Boram understood the concern. Every human, military officer had studied the histories of species that had challenged the galactic order. Most of those species no longer existed. Yunji, I've read those same reports, but I noticed something interesting. Every species that fought the Alliance did it according to Alliance rules. They arranged their fleets in standard formations. They targeted only military vessels. They surrendered when casualties reached acceptable levels. Boram paused. What if the Alliance has never fought someone who ignored their rules completely? The next morning came too quickly. Alliance sensors detected the human fleet exactly where Boram had positioned them, hiding behind the moon in standard defensive formation. The alien commanders seemed pleased that humanity was finally learning proper military procedure. Admiral, Yunji reported, the Alliance is broadcasting their formal battle declaration. They want us to acknowledge their terms of engagement and confirm our understanding of surrender conditions. Send them our response, Boram ordered. The message was simple: we don't accept your terms. For several minutes, the Alliance fleet didn't move. Their commanders seemed to be discussing this unexpected response. Finally, they broadcast again. Human commanders, you must acknowledge the terms of engagement. It is required under the Galactic Military Accord. Tell them we never signed their accord, Boram replied. This caused even longer delays. The Alliance had apparently never encountered a species that simply refused to follow established protocols. While they debated, Boram watched her tactical display. The Alliance fleet had arranged itself in textbook formation, with command ships in the center and smaller vessels protecting the flanks. They moved toward human positions slowly, giving the defenders plenty of time to prepare for honorable battle. Sujin, Boram whispered into her communicator. Execute Ghost Protocol. In the asteroid belt, 5 human stealth ships activated systems the Alliance had never seen before. Instead of engaging enemy vessels directly, they began targeting something much more important: the Alliance communication network. The first sign of trouble came when Alliance ships began losing contact with their command vessels. The stealth ships used precisely targeted electromagnetic pulses to disrupt communication arrays without destroying the ships carrying them. Admiral, Yunji reported, Alliance commanders are trying to contact each other, but their signals are being jammed. They're requesting that we cease electronic warfare until proper battle protocols can be established. What do you think, Hyunwoo? Boram asked her tactical officer. I think they're about to learn that humans don't ask permission to use every advantage we can find. The main battle began when Alliance forces reached the predetermined engagement range. They opened fire on the human fleet behind the moon, expecting return fire from established defensive positions. Instead, they found empty space. Phase 2, Boram ordered. The human fleet emerged from behind the moon, but not where the Alliance expected. Instead of facing the enemy head-on, they came from above and below, using the moon's gravity to slingshot toward Alliance flanks. What followed violated every principle of civilized warfare. Human ships didn't maintain formation. They split into small groups that attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. They didn't target the strongest enemy vessels first. Instead, they focused on supply ships, communication arrays, and support craft. Admiral, Minho reported from the station, Alliance landing craft are approaching. Should I activate our defensive systems? Not yet. Let them land. I want them to think we're helpless. The Alliance ground forces that landed on Kepler Station expected to find frightened civilians and minimal resistance. What they found was a carefully prepared series of traps, ambushes, and defensive positions that had been built into the station's structure from the beginning. Alliance forces on the station are requesting immediate surrender of all human personnel, Minho reported. They seem confused about why we're shooting at them instead of negotiating terms. Meanwhile, in space, the Alliance fleet was learning that human tactics could be devastatingly effective. Sujin's stealth ships emerged from the asteroid belt to attack command vessels while they were trying to coordinate responses to the main fleet's unconventional assault. Alliance Admiral Korthak is broadcasting on all frequencies, Yunji announced. He's demanding that we fight honorably according to established protocols. He says our tactics are barbaric and uncivilized. Tell him that civilized tactics don't work against uncivilized enemies, Bahram replied. The battle raged for 6 hours. By the end, the mighty Triumvirate Alliance had lost 67 ships, including 2 command vessels and most of their support craft. The human fleet had lost 4 ships and suffered moderate damage to 8 others. Most shocking of all, the humans refused to accept Alliance surrender. Admiral Korthak is requesting formal surrender negotiations, Yunji reported. He wants to discuss terms for withdrawal and prisoner exchange according to standard protocols. Bahram looked at the tactical display. The Alliance still had over 80 ships, but they were scattered, confused, and low on supplies. Their ground forces on the station had been completely surrounded and cut off from support. Tell Admiral Korthak that we don't negotiate with invaders, Bahram announced. He has 2 choices: immediate and complete withdrawal from human space, or we'll finish destroying his fleet. Admiral, Hyunwoo said quietly, that's not how galactic warfare works. Winners are supposed. General Jeho stood in the war room on Luna Base, staring at the holographic display that showed the largest military formation ever assembled in known galactic history. 12 different species had united under the banner of the Coalition, their combined fleets numbering over 3,000 ships. Sir? Colonel Haewon entered with the latest intelligence reports. Coalition forces have begun moving toward the outer human colonies. Their lead commander is war scholar Kendron of the Nethian Collective. Jeho knew that name. Kendron had never lost a battle in over 2 centuries of warfare. The Nethians lived in the gas giant clouds and had perfected 3-dimensional naval tactics that other species could barely comprehend. What's our current fleet strength? Jeho asked. 147 ships, sir. Most are converted civilian vessels with military upgrades. We have perhaps 20 actual warships built for combat. The numbers were impossible. Even if every human ship performed perfectly, they were outnumbered more than 20 to 1. By any reasonable military analysis, humanity should surrender immediately and hope for merciful treatment. Sir, Communications Officer Yujin reported from her station. We're receiving a transmission from war scholar Kendron. He's broadcasting to all human colonies. Put it through. The holographic display shifted to show an alien unlike any human had seen before. Kendron resembled a floating jellyfish made of gas and electricity, with tendrils that sparked with energy. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Humans of the outer worlds, Kendron began. You have shown impressive tactical innovation, but you lack understanding of galactic realities. Your victories against the Valak and the Triumvirate were achieved through surprise and primitive cunning. This will not serve you against a proper coalition. The war scholar paused, his energy form pulsing with different colors. I offer you one opportunity for education. Submit to coalition authority. Accept placement in designated colony zones. Learn proper military protocols. Do this, and your species will be permitted to exist as a junior member of galactic civilization. How generous, muttered Captain Sujin, who had arrived for the strategic planning session. Kendron continued, refuse this offer, and the coalition will demonstrate why the Galactic Military Accord has maintained peace for 3 millennia. You will learn our ways, or you will be contained. The transmission ended, leaving the war room in silence. Well, said Colonel Haewon, at least he's honest about wanting to conquer us. Jeho activated the tactical display, showing coalition fleet movements throughout human space. The enemy had divided their forces into 4 groups, each targeting a different human colony cluster. It was a classic envelopment strategy that had worked against hundreds of species over the centuries. Sir, Captain Dong-hyun entered with his intelligence team. We've intercepted coalition planning documents. They're calling this operation Civilizing Strike. The plan is to defeat our fleets quickly, occupy our colonies, and relocate our population to controlled zones where we can be properly educated. How do they plan to defeat us quickly? Jeho asked. Standard siege protocols, sir. They'll establish blockade zones around each colony, set up formal battle lines, and demand surrender when our casualties reach 25%. If we refuse to surrender, They'll escalate to orbital. Bombardment of designated military targets. Jeho studied the coalition force dispositions. Everything about their strategy assumed humans would fight according to established galactic conventions. They had planned for defensive formations, formal battle zones, and predictable tactical responses. What if we don't fight the way they expect? He asked quietly. Sir? Captain Sujin looked puzzled. They've planned to fight the human fleet, Jeho explained. What if there is no human fleet to fight? Over the next week, humanity implemented the most audacious military strategy in galactic history. Instead of concentrating their forces to defend specific colonies, they scattered their fleet into tiny groups and abandoned the concept of territorial defense entirely. Operation Broken Chain is now in effect, Jeho announced to his commanders. Every ship operates independently. No formations, no predetermined targets, no defensive positions. Each captain chooses their own objectives based on one simple principle: hurt the enemy's ability to make war. Captain Minho, commanding a squadron of stealth frigates, struck the first blow. Instead of attacking coalition warships, he targeted their supply convoys, manufacturing facilities, and communication relays. His ships would appear from hyperspace, destroy key infrastructure, and vanish before enemy forces could respond. Sir, Captain Minho reported after his third raid, coalition commanders are demanding that we engage them in proper battle. They keep sending messages asking why we won't fight honorably. What did you tell them? Jeho asked. I told them that honor is a luxury for people who aren't fighting for their survival. Meanwhile, Commander Yunji led a different kind of mission. Instead of attacking coalition forces directly, she made contact with the species that had been conquered by the coalition over the centuries. Her small diplomatic ship visited worlds that had been forcibly integrated into the galactic order. General, she reported from the Cathera system, the locals are very interested in our tactical innovations. They've been under coalition rule for 600 years, but they remember their freedom. Are they willing to fight for it? Jeho asked. Some are, but they need weapons and training. They've been forced to use coalition military doctrine for so long that they've forgotten their own way of making war. This gave Jeho an idea that would change the course of galactic history. Yunji, I'm sending you Captain Youngsuk and a training team. Start teaching the Cathera how humans fight. Show them that coalition rules only work if everyone agrees to follow them. What followed was unprecedented in galactic affairs. Human military advisors began appearing on oppressed worlds throughout coalition space, teaching local resistance groups how to abandon traditional tactics in favor of human-style warfare. The Cathera learned to use their natural camouflage abilities for guerrilla attacks. The crystalline Zephyrians discovered that their ability to become temporarily invisible made them perfect for sabotage missions. The insectoid Vrex found that their natural hive-mind coordination could be used for swarm tactics that overwhelmed traditional defenses. Sir, Intelligence Officer Insu reported, coalition forces are experiencing uprising on 17 different worlds. Local populations are using our tactical doctrines to attack military installations, supply lines, and government facilities. War scholar Kendron's response was swift and brutal. Coalition fleets began targeting civilian populations on rebellious worlds, breaking the most sacred rule of the Galactic Military Accord. Sir, Communications Officer Eugene announced, we're receiving emergency broadcasts from the Cathera homeworld. Coalition forces are bombarding civilian areas. Jeho felt cold anger fill his chest. Show me. The holographic display revealed scenes of destruction as coalition ships fired on cities full of non-combatants. The war scholar himself was broadcasting justifications claiming that populations supporting illegal warfare had forfeited their civilian status. Sir, Colonel Haywan said quietly, this changes everything. If the coalition is willing to target civilians, they've abandoned their own rules. Then we abandon ours as well, Jeho replied. Eugene, send a message to all human ships. Operation Shattered Crown is now in effect. Captain Dong Hyun looked confused. Sir, we don't have an Operation Shattered Crown. We do now, Jeho replied grimly. Every coalition government facility, military academy and command center in 12-star systems. We hit them all at the same time. What followed was the most precisely coordinated military strike in galactic history. Hundreds of small human ships supported by newly trained alien resistance fighters attacked coalition infrastructure simultaneously across dozens of worlds. Captain Su Jin led the strike on the coalition's primary war college, a facility that had trained military leaders for 2,000 years. Her stealth ships bypassed orbital defenses by hiding in a supply convoy, then emerged to disable the Academy's shields while resistance fighters attacked from the ground. "Sir," she reported, as ancient battle standards burned in the Academy's halls, "I'm broadcasting to surviving coalition leaders. Should I offer them terms for surrender?" "Tell them our terms are simple," Jeho replied. "Stop targeting civilians, withdraw from rebellious worlds, and never threaten human space again. Otherwise, we'll finish what they started." The coalition's response revealed how completely they misunderstood their situation. Instead of negotiating, they demanded that humans face them in honorable battle according to proper military protocols. "They still don't understand," Colonel Haywan observed. "They think this is about military tactics." "No," Jeho replied, watching reports flood in from successful strikes across coalition space. "This is about freedom, and free people fight differently than slaves." The war's turning point came when Captain Min Ho intercepted a coalition planning document that revealed their ultimate strategy. After defeating humanity, they intended to use the same methods to civilize 12 other species who had shown inappropriate military creativity. "Sir," Min Ho reported. Admiral Donghyun watched the stars from the bridge of his flagship, the New Seoul, as emergency signals flooded the communication channels. 2 years after humanity's first contact with the Galactic Order, that order was collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. "Admiral," Captain Young-suk approached with the latest intelligence reports. "Coalition remnants have begun targeting refugee ships. They're claiming that any vessel carrying rebel sympathizers is a legitimate military target." Dong-hyun felt his jaw clench. War scholar Kendron and his surviving allies had abandoned every principle of civilized warfare in their desperation to maintain control. The beings who had once lectured humanity about proper military conduct were now committing the very atrocities their own laws forbade. "How many ships?" Dong-hyun asked. 17 refugee convoys attacked in the past week, sir. Mostly civilians, fleeing from coalition-controlled worlds to join the Free Systems Alliance. The attacks are concentrated in the Vega sector. "Show me the tactical situation." The holographic display revealed a star map that looked nothing like the orderly galaxy humans had first encountered. Red zones marked coalition strongholds. Blue areas showed Free Systems territory, and yellow regions indicated ongoing battles. Most disturbing were the purple markers that showed refugee routes under constant attack. "Sir," Communications Officer Hyo Jung reported, "we're receiving distress signals from convoy designation Lima 7. 3 coalition cruisers are pursuing them toward the Centauri jump point." Dong-hyun studied the pursuit trajectory. Convoy Lima 7 carried families from the Kithara homeworld, fleeing coalition reprisals for their planet's rebellion. If they reached Free System space, they would be safe. But the coalition ships would intercept them in less than 4 hours. "Orders, sir?" Captain Young-suk asked. Under traditional military protocol, the answer was clear. File diplomatic protests, request emergency tribunal hearings, and eventually impose sanctions through proper galactic channels. The process would take months while civilians died. "Signal the fleet," Dong-hyun ordered. "Operation Shattered Crown is now expanded to include all coalition forces attacking non-combatants. We end this today." "Sir," Young-suk said quietly, "that's 17 different star systems. Even with our allied forces, we don't have enough ships to hit them all simultaneously." "Then we improvise," Dong-hyun replied. "Send word to every Free Systems fleet in range. Tell them we're done watching." Coalition forces murder families. What followed became known as the Day of Broken Crowns, though historians would debate for decades whether it was humanity's finest hour or the moment when galactic civilization lost its last hope for peaceful resolution. Across 17 star Systems, human and allied forces struck at coalition targets with a precision that left enemy commanders stunned. But this time, the attacks focused not on military installations but on the infrastructure that allowed coalition forces to pursue refugee ships. Captain Su Jin, now commanding a mixed squadron of human and Cathara vessels, intercepted convoy, Lima 7's pursuers just as they closed for the attack. Her ships emerged from hyperspace directly between the coalition cruisers and their intended victims. "Coalition vessels," she broadcast, "you are targeting civilians in violation of every galactic law that ever mattered. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The coalition commander's response revealed how far the once proud galactic order had fallen. These are not civilians. They are supporters of illegal rebellion and therefore legitimate targets. "Wrong answer," Sujin replied. The battle was brief and decisive. Coalition forces trained for formal warfare against predictable enemies couldn't adapt to tactics that had been refined through 2 years of irregular conflict. Within minutes, 2 cruisers were disabled, and the third was fleeing toward coalition space. "Ma'am," reported Lieutenant Insu from his tactical station, "the refugee convoy is safe. They're requesting permission to thank us personally." "Tell them thanks aren't necessary," Sujin replied. "Just get to free system space and help build something better than what they're running from." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy, as human and allied forces systematically dismantled the coalition's ability to threaten non-combatants. The war had evolved beyond military conquest into something more fundamental, a contest between 2 completely different ideas about how civilization should work. Meanwhile, in the depths of coalition space, war scholar Kendron faced the collapse of everything he had spent his long life defending. His species had ruled through superior tactics and unwavering adherence to established protocols. Now both advantages had been stripped away by beings who refused to play by any rules except their own. "War scholar," his aide reported, "the High Council is demanding explanations for our recent tactical decisions. They question the wisdom of targeting civilian populations." Kendron's energy form pulsed with dark colors. "The High Council created this situation by refusing to take decisive action against the human threat. Now they criticize us for doing what is necessary to preserve galactic order. Sir, what are your orders regarding the remaining refugee convoys?" "Destroy them all," Kendron commanded. "Every being that flees to join the rebellion weakens our position. If the humans want to protect civilians, let them try to be everywhere at once." But Kendron had underestimated both human determination and the strength of the alliance they had built. Admiral Dong Hyun's response to the escalating attacks on civilians was swift and devastating. "Operation Final Crown," he announced to his assembled fleet commanders. "Every coalition government facility, every military academy, every command center, every supply depot. We don't just disable them. We destroy them completely." "Sir?" Admiral Min Kyung asked. "What about coalition surrender attempts?" "Several member species are trying to negotiate separate peace agreements." Dong Hyun thought about the burning refugee ships, the families who had died simply for seeking freedom from oppression. "Any coalition forces that surrender unconditionally and withdraw from all occupied territory will be allowed to leave. Any forces that continue targeting civilians will be hunted down and destroyed. Make sure they understand the difference." The Yao final assault began at exactly 1200 hours, Galactic Standard Time, across 43 star systems simultaneously. Human fleets, supported by dozens of newly liberated species, struck at the remaining foundations of coalition power with ruthless efficiency. Admiral Boram, now commanding the Southern Fleet, led the attack on the coalition's central command complex in the Rigel system. Her forces had grown from the desperate defenders of Kepler Station into a formidable military organization supported by half the galaxy. "Ma'am," reported Captain Tae-young, "Coalition Central Command is requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations. They're claiming diplomatic immunity under the Galactic Military Accord." "Tell them the Galactic Military Accord died when they started murdering refugees," Boram replied. "They can surrender unconditionally or fight to the end. Those are their options." The battle for Coalition Central Command lasted 6 hours. By the end, The facility that had coordinated galactic warfare for 3 millennia was a shattered ruin, its ancient halls echoing with silence instead of strategic planning sessions. As reports flooded in from successful strikes across Coalition space, it became clear that the Galactic Order had reached its breaking point. Member species began withdrawing their fleets to defend their home systems. Ancient alliances fractured as civilizations chose between supporting a dying system and joining the revolution that was replacing it. Sir, Intelligence Officer Yu Jin reported to Admiral Dong Hyun, Coalition resistance is collapsing. War Scholar Kendron has been abandoned by most of his allies. He's retreating to the Outer Rim with only his core Nethian forces. What about the Free Systems Alliance? Dong Hyun asked. Growing every day, sir. 73 worlds have declared independence and requested membership. They're asking for help establishing defensive pacts and trade agreements. Dong Hyun looked at the star map, now showing more blue Free Systems territory than red Coalition space. Humanity had accomplished something that most observers had thought impossible. They had shattered a galactic order that had seemed permanent and replaced it with something new. But the cost had been enormous. Entire worlds had been devastated by warfare. Millions of beings had died in the fighting. Ancient institutions that had maintained peace for millennia lay in ruins. Sir? Captain Young-suk asked quietly. Was it worth it? All this destruction? All these deaths? Dong Hyun thought about the refugee convoys that now traveled safely through Free Systems space. He thought about the former Coalition worlds where beings could choose their own forms of government for the first time in centuries. He thought about the children growing up in a galaxy where freedom meant more than following orders. Ask me in 50 years, he replied. When we see what kind of galaxy these children build. In the weeks that followed, Coalition remnants continued to fight desperate rearguard actions, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The age of enforced galactic unity was ending, replaced by something messier but more vital. A galaxy where different species could pursue different paths without fear of correction. The breaking point had been reached and passed. Now came the harder task of building. President Jiwoo stood at the podium of the rebuilt Kepler station, looking out at the most diverse gathering in galactic history. Representatives from 147 different species filled the assembly hall, each delegation bringing their own ideas about how free civilizations should interact. 2 years had passed since the final collapse of the Coalition. The galaxy had spent those years learning to live without the rigid order that had defined civilization for 3 millennia. It hadn't been easy. Fellow beings of the Free Systems Alliance, Jiwoo began. We gather today not to impose new rules on unwilling subjects but to establish principles that will help us coexist as equals. The translation devices worked overtime as her words reached species that communicated through color changes, electromagnetic pulses, chemical signals, and dozens of other methods. Despite their differences, they had all chosen to be here. Admiral Boram, now serving as Director of Interspecies Security, watched from the gallery as delegates debated fundamental questions about sovereignty, trade, and mutual defense. At 73 years old, she had lived to see humanity evolve from desperate refugees to respected leaders in galactic affairs. Ma'am, Captain Tae-young approached with the daily intelligence briefing. The Outer Rim situation is stabilizing. Most of the former Coalition holdouts have either joined the Alliance or established neutral territories. What about War Scholar Kendron? Boram asked. Still in exile with his core followers. They've established a small enclave beyond the Galactic Rim and seem content to be left alone. Our scouts report they're not building military forces or making contact with other species. Boram nodded. The old War Scholar had become a symbol of the previous age, a reminder of what happened when order became more important than freedom. Most beings were content to let him fade into history. In the assembly hall, the debates continued. The Cathara delegation argued for complete planetary autonomy. The crystalline Zephyrians wanted standardized trade protocols. The insectoid Vrex proposed mutual defense agreements based on regional cooperation rather than galaxy-wide treaties. The question before us, said Ambassador Taemin, now representing human interests in the new galactic order, is not whether we need rules, The question is whether those rules will serve freedom or restrict it. He had come a long way from the confused commander who had first encountered alien fleets following incomprehensible protocols. His experiences had taught him that good rules enabled cooperation between different peoples, while bad rules forced everyone to become the same. The old Galactic Military Accord tried to prevent conflict by controlling how civilizations could develop. Taemin continued. We propose something different, preventing conflict by ensuring that all civilizations have genuine choices about their own destiny. The Free Systems Charter that emerged from 6 months of negotiations reflected this philosophy. Instead of detailed regulations about military conduct, it established broad principles about consent, sovereignty, and mutual respect. Instead of requiring uniform practices, it created frameworks for resolving disputes between different approaches to civilization. The charter isn't perfect, Admiral Dong-hyun observed as he reviewed the final document. But it's a living document that can evolve as we learn more about coexistence. The signing ceremony took place exactly 3 years after the Battle of Kepler Station. Representatives from 147 species added their signatures, marks, energy imprints, or other forms of consent to the document that would guide galactic civilization into a new era. As the ceremony concluded, President Ji-woo found herself standing beside Admiral Bo-ram, watching as delegates from dozens of worlds celebrated their new alliance. "Do you think it will work?" Ji-woo asked. Bo-ram looked at the diverse crowd of beings who had chosen cooperation over domination. "It has to work. The alternative is going back to the old way of doing things." The early years of the Free Systems Alliance were chaotic, but promising. Different species developed unique approaches to everything from military organization to economic policy. Some experiments failed, but failures were learning opportunities rather than reasons for outside intervention. Captain Su-jin, now commanding the Alliance Exploration Service, led missions beyond the galactic rim to make contact with species that had been isolated during the Coalition era. Her teams carried a simple message: the galaxy had room for different ways of life. "Commander," reported Lieutenant Ye-jin during one such mission, "we've made contact with a species that's never heard of the old military accord. They want to know if we're here to conquer them." "Tell them we're here to offer friendship," Su-jin replied. "If they're interested in trade, cultural exchange, or mutual defense agreements, we're willing to discuss it. If they want to be left alone, that's fine too." This approach sometimes led to misunderstandings. Species that had spent centuries living under coalition rule found it hard to believe that anyone would respect their right to refuse cooperation. Others were so eager for protection that they tried to surrender their sovereignty immediately. "It takes time," observed Ambassador Yoonji, who specialized in helping newly contacted species understand their options. "Most civilizations have been taught that you either dominate or submit. The idea that you can cooperate as equals is foreign to them." The biggest test of the new galactic order came when the Andraxan Empire, a powerful species from the galactic south, declared war on 3 Free Systems Alliance members simultaneously. The Andraxans had watched the coalition's collapse and decided that human-taught tactics could help them expand their own territory. "They're using modified versions of our strategies," reported General Minho, now commanding Alliance Rapid Response Forces. "Surprise attacks, irregular warfare, targeting infrastructure rather than just military forces." The Alliance response revealed how much had changed since humanity's desperate fights against the coalition. Instead of one species facing overwhelming odds, dozens of civilizations contributed ships, troops, and resources to defend their threatened allies. "Sir," Captain Hyunwoo reported during the campaign's decisive battle, "Andraxan forces are requesting surrender negotiations. They want to discuss terms according to pre-war territorial arrangements." General Minho studied the tactical display, which showed Andraxan forces in full retreat after 6 months of unsuccessful campaigning. "Tell them our terms are simple: complete withdrawal from Alliance territory and reparations for damages. If they want to negotiate anything else, they can discuss it with the people they attacked." The Andraxan War lasted 8 months and ended with the aggressors accepting unconditional surrender. But unlike the coalition conflicts, the aftermath focused on reconciliation rather than punishment. Alliance mediators helped negotiate agreements that addressed the Andraxians' legitimate concerns about territorial expansion while protecting the rights of their neighbors. "We could have destroyed them completely," observed President Jiwoo during the peace negotiations. "But destroyed enemies become long-term problems. Reformed enemies can become future allies." 5 years after the establishment of the Free Systems Alliance, Admiral Boram prepared for retirement, confident that the galaxy had found a sustainable path forward. The old woman who had once faced impossible odds at Kepler Station now watched as her former enemies became trading partners and allies. "Ma'am," Captain Tae-young asked during her farewell ceremony, "any advice for those of us who will carry on?" Boram looked out at the stars, thinking about everything humanity had learned since first contact with galactic civilization. "Remember that rules should serve freedom, not chain it," she said finally. "And remember that sometimes the most important rule is knowing when to break all the others." The galaxy that emerged from humanity's revolution bore little resemblance to the rigid order that had preceded it. Wars still happened, but they were fought for reasons people could understand rather than to enforce abstract principles. Different species developed along different paths, but those differences created opportunities for cooperation rather than excuses for conquest. Most importantly, children grew up knowing that they could choose their own destinies rather than accepting whatever fate was assigned to them by distant authorities. In the years that followed, human exploration fleets ventured beyond known space, not as conquerors but as teachers and students. They carried with them the simple message that had transformed galactic civilization. There was room in the universe for different ways of life, as long as those ways respected the freedom of others. Commander Tai Min, now elderly but still exploring, stood on the bridge of a new vessel as they approached an uncontacted star system. His crew represented a dozen different species, united by curiosity rather than authority. "Sir," reported sensor specialist Hyo Jung, detecting artificial structures around the fourth planet. "Looks like we've found another civilization." "Send the standard greeting," Taemin ordered. "Let them know we come in peace and friendship, not to impose our ways or judge theirs as the message transmitted toward the unknown world." Taemin reflected on how much had changed since his first confused encounter with alien customs. Humanity had learned that the galaxy was big enough for countless different approaches to civilization, as long as those approaches respected